So yeah, today's topic of conversation is just talking a little bit about our waste, talking about our resources and how we can become more resilient by being more resourceful, how we can make our products last longer so that we have more products to use further down the line. So this is a picture that really is just meant to kind of get your brains geared up towards this talk about waste in our environment. So in the question box or the chat box, feel free to type in any thoughts that come to your mind, any observations that you see. What are you seeing in this picture? What are the emotions that are evoked when you see a picture like this? I know for me at least, it looks like a beautiful, pristine, natural place that has been trashed, that just has our human-made products that are kind of just filling up this beautiful blue wave that I'm sure people travel all over the world to go and surf and play in and enjoy. But more and more we're finding that our products that we consume are ending up in our natural locations and ecosystems and impacting other ecosystems around the world and other communities around the world too. So I would love to hear some of the thoughts or emotions or observations that you see from this, and perhaps we'll get to hear some of those in a little bit. But for the sake of time, I guess we'll just keep going through the presentation. I want to start off the conversation by saying that in nature, there is no waste. So, over millions and billions of years, our Earth has figured out how to cycle elements and nutrients and chemicals into different ways of being. So there's solid and liquid and gas, and there's, these resources, they flow throughout our earth in different forms and in different shapes. So carbon, it goes from the air into the soil. Sometimes it's even locked up in ice. Or we have organic waste, which has nutrients that, when things die, they decompose and go back into the soil, and then future generations of growth take those nutrients and they rely on those to grow. So there are cycles that nature has implemented over, again, millions and billions of years. And there's a quote on this screen. It's very small, so I'm just going to read it out so everyone can hear it. But it's: sustainability is about the ability of human society to continue indefinitely within these natural cycles. So basically, us humans are really the only ones breaking these cycles that nature has implemented over millennia, and we're the ones creating the waste that ultimately we have to deal with and that are impacting our environment and our communities. So the products that we consume come from resources. Resources are a source of supply, support, or aid, especially one that can be readily drawn upon when needed. And more specifically, we rely on a lot of natural resources to make our products. And a natural resource is the natural wealth of a country, consisting of land, forests, mineral deposits, water, etc. So, a lot of our natural resources, like forests, trees can be used to make wood products. They can be used to make paper products. Oil from the ground can be used to make plastic. So we extract a lot of natural elements in order to make the products that we have. And the top natural resources that we use around the world are water, air, coal, oil, natural gas. We use phosphorus and other minerals, especially in our soil. We use iron and soil, and we use forest and timber. So some of these natural resources are more linear, which is the picture you'll see on the left hand of the screen, which is where we, take like oil, for example, to make plastic or to power our, machinery. We take them from the earth, we make things or we consume them, and then we throw it away. They're wasted. We don't really get to use them anymore. But other things, like even water, for instance, or plastic, can be recycled. So some things we can kind of clean them up, repurpose them, reuse them, and we can use them over and over again rather than sending them to the landfill and having them be wasted. So This is something I'm going to refer to a couple times throughout the presentation, but really just keeping in mind that we can exist in a linear system, which is where we take things, we use them, and then we just throw them away and don't really have another use for them. We don't get any further production out of them, any more use. Or we can have things that we can use over and over again and really just try to maximize the potential of certain resources so that we are not just taking from the earth consistently, and ultimately we're going to run out of that stuff if we just keep taking and taking and taking and not giving back. So just to show you a little bit about the history of waste and how we have been generating it. The blue triangles on this chart here show the total amount of weight per year that we generate in waste, which has gone from 88.1 million tons in 1960 all the way up to, in 2013, in the United States, we were generating 254 million tons of waste, and which equated out to be about 4.4 pounds of waste per person per day in the year 2013. This chart right here shows the recycling rates. So in the year 2013, we recycled 87.2 million tons of waste, but the orange squares on here show the percentage of all the recycled material that was actually recycled, and it was only about 34%. So we only recycled about a third. One out of every 3 products that could have been recycled actually got recycled in the year 2013. So there's a lot of improvement to be made, and we can be putting a lot of these resources that we've taken from the earth, we can be using them again instead of just trashing them. And if we break it down by material, the most recycled material is lead acid batteries, because there are laws that enforce those batteries be recycled because they have great environmental damages or destruction when placed out in the environment. And then steel cans are the next most recycled item. But if we work our way down to the end, we see that PET bottles and jars, which are plastic bottles, only 31% of plastic bottles are recycled, and only about 34% of glass containers are recycled as well. So we'll see why this is a problem, and how, you know, increasing our recycling rates of these products can actually help our atmosphere, help our environment, help our ecosystems. So if we break everything down by material, we see that paper is the single most disposed of item, with it being 27% of the total generated waste. So let's jump into paper. We, you know, as tree people, we are focused on paper. We're focused on trees and saving trees and planting more trees. So if paper is our biggest source of waste, we also want to figure out how we can get more of that paper recycled, so we don't have to chop down more trees and save those trees that we're trying to keep around in our urban forest. So paper. Paper comes from trees, and first trees are sent to lumber mills where wood products are made. So your lumber or plywood, wood chips, those are made at a lumber mill. Then the wood waste or the wood pulp that comes from a lumber mill goes to a paper mill, and then that makes paper products like lunch bags, notebooks, napkins, anything paper you can think of. So the average American uses about 700 pounds, or about 7 trees worth of paper and wood products each year. And the making of paper, it actually uses more water per ton than any other product in the world. And it's the 3rd largest industrial consumer of energy. So we're using a lot of water, we're using a lot of, you know, coal to power these machines, and the whole process of making paper is a very energy intensive one, and it uses a lot of water as well. And it actually takes about 390 gallons of oil just to produce 1 ton of paper. So about 2,000 pounds of paper takes about 390 gallons of oil. And if we recycled paper, and if we purchased recycled paper, it would actually save us a lot of water. It would save us a lot of air pollution and energy. Just by using recycled paper, it reduces water pollution by 35%, it reduces air pollution by 74%, and it reduces the energy usage by 75%. And a lot of people don't know, but paper can actually be recycled up to 7 times, about 5 to 7 times before the fibers become too short to recycle. So those wood fibers, those pulp fibers that I was talking about a minute ago, they become shorter and shorter every time you recycle it. But even the super short wood pulp fibers can become newspapers and egg cartons. So there are still uses for those short fibers, but paper on average has about 5 to 7 uses before it cannot be recycled anymore. So now I open up the floor to you. I would love to hear some questions about paper waste or paper products, or please share any sustainable products that you use instead of paper products. Are there any items in your home that you're unsure of if they are recyclable or not? Maybe a magazine, maybe kind of like a paper takeout container with food. Or what do you use instead of, paper towels? What do you use instead of Kleenex? We would love to hear some of your ideas, some of your questions, some of the ways that you reduce paper waste in your home, or just any other general questions that you have. We would love to hear them and hash them out.
Go ahead, students, go ahead and use your Q&A document to list everything. Our chat has been disabled, but they can use the Q&A. Go ahead and type
Great.
your observations or your ideas on what other products can we use instead of paper products. So go ahead and use the Q&A. Kenny, I guess we can go ahead and share some of the ideas to echo what the
Sure.
students are describing.
Absolutely, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about what you can do, especially at home on a daily basis, to kind of minimize paper waste. So here are some pictures to kind of demonstrate what we can use instead of paper. So starting all the way on the left, this green cloth, you could use to wipe up any mess you have on your counter or on your floor. If you spilled some water, or if you're making dinner and things get a little messy, instead of using, 10 paper towels to clean things up, you can use just one rag or two rags to wipe things up, clean things up. And guess what? You could throw that rag into the washing machine and wash it, and you can use it, hundreds more times. Instead of a paper towel, you're going to use it once and throw it away, and that's just wasteful. A reusable bag. When you're going to the grocery store, I know some grocery stores aren't allowing it at this moment, some are, but if you're able to, bring your own bags to reduce the need to get paper bags at the grocery store. Also, one way of, just reducing the need for paper is to read books on like a Kindle or online. It's not the same as a good old-fashioned book, but it does reduce the need to have that paper be printed if you're not reading it on a printed book. Instead of using paper plates, which can be very convenient and easy to use, use a reusable plate, something that you can wash and reuse again and again. Again, it's a single use versus something that you can use hundreds or thousands of times. And something that I try to do on an everyday basis is carry around a bandana in my back pocket or somewhere in my car, where I can, if I'm sweaty, I can wipe off my sweat off my forehead, or if I need to blow my nose, I can kind of just blow my nose in my handkerchief, my bandana. And at the end of the day, I'll just throw that into the washing machine as well. And then again, I can use that hundreds of more times instead of just using a tissue paper, throwing it away, and that paper won't be good anymore. So yeah, would love to hear any other ideas that y'all have of how you reduce your paper waste. But I suppose for the time being, we'll move on to the next topic of waste, which is organic waste, which on this pie chart would be the combination of food waste, yard trimmings, and wood waste. Now, organic waste is pretty much anything that grew from the soil, anything that grew from the ground. So again, it could be food scraps, it could be anything that grows in your garden, or wood, because wood comes from trees and trees come from the ground. So organic matter, again, food waste, grass clippings, dead leaves, all that good stuff. all of that that goes to the landfill, it actually breaks down into a greenhouse gas, methane, which contributes to global warming. And so landfills are the third largest human-made cause of methane emissions. So anytime we're putting this organic or this green waste in our trash bin to go to the landfill, ultimately we're allowing these greenhouse gases to go up into our atmosphere, which makes our atmosphere hotter. And we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. And not only are we impacting our atmosphere and the air temperature through sending organic waste to the landfill, but we're also wasting water by growing those crops and not using them. We're wasting gasoline, we're wasting energy, labor, pesticides, land, and fertilizers. So we want to try and capture as much of that organic waste as we can, because also agriculture is a lot of the water that we use. So 70% of all the fresh water that we use goes towards agriculture, and 25% of that fresh water used goes towards growing foods that won't be consumed. So we're just wasting a lot of water also by not capturing the organic waste that is grown. So again, just opening it up for you to type into the Q&A chat box. What are some ways that you reduce organic waste, or do you have any questions about organic waste? Maybe how can you handle, how could you process your organic waste, maybe at home, or maybe somehow else, some other way without sending them to the landfill? Uh, you know, any other questions that you've got would be great. And Mar, maybe at the end we might have a moment or two to kind of go over some of these, but if not, hopefully the next slide will kind of answer some of those questions. But so here are some ways that I encourage you to reduce your organic waste. One being, if you have grass, if you're mowing your lawn, this old-fashioned lawnmower all the way on the left kind of just spits the grass clippings back out onto your lawn. So by not removing the grass clippings and just keeping them on the lawn, it'll actually decompose back into the soil, and the soil will regain those nutrients from those grass clippings that will help to fuel further growth. So it's actually kind of like a fertilizer, if you will, by just clipping your grass and keeping it on there instead of bagging it up and sending it to the landfill. The bottom picture on the left, the one that looks like a pile of dirt, is actually a pile of compost. So compost is pretty much a way to recycle fruits and veggies and garden scraps and grass clippings. It's like recycling them, but not putting them in your blue bin. If you have a green bin at home, perhaps you could put your food waste or your garden clippings in there. And this is what happens to them. They get composted, so they decompose, they turn back into a soil amendment, which means we add it back to the soil. And all the nutrients that were locked up in those fruit or vegetable clippings and leftovers and moldy food that didn't get eaten, those nutrients get put back into the soil, so those nutrients can help to fuel further growth. Again, it's kind of like a fertilizer to where it's really improving the quality of our soil. Food Finders, this picture in the middle, is an organization that can actually come to a school, come to a business, come to anywhere, a grocery store, anywhere that there's large amounts of food that are going to be uneaten, and they pick it up and they give it to food banks and churches and shelters where the food can actually be redistributed so that other people can eat the food before it goes bad, because ultimately that's the number one way to try to get rid of all the organic waste, is to have people eat it, or if people aren't going to eat it, maybe having animals eat it. There's another cool program that takes uneaten food and brings it to local zoos, so actually the animals get to eat some of the food that we perhaps could have been eating as well, but we didn't get to it. And then the pen and the pad of paper is to demonstrate making a grocery list. Something as easy as making a list before you go to the grocery store can actually save a lot of food waste. If you create a list of meals that you're going to make throughout the week and only get the ingredients you need for those meals and then some other snack foods, it could reduce the amount of food waste that you have. Because I know I've gone to the grocery store when I'm hungry and everything looks good and I just pick up everything, and then at the end of the week I'm like, oh no, I didn't really need this, or I didn't have a use for this, so it ends up becoming waste. So even simply by making a list, it can kind of help to reduce that.
Kenny?
Yeah.
We have a question that you
Oh,
might want
great.
to address. So we
Great.
have Nathan from our Southgate Middle School. Um, is fertilizer bad for Earth sometimes? Can you elaborate on that? Can
Okay.
it be bad?
Good question, Nathan. So fertilizer, sometimes there are different types of fertilizer, but yeah, fertilizer can be bad in the sense that for large scale fertilizers, for like applying it to huge agricultural fields, sometimes we get the chemicals that we need from mountains, from minerals that are in our earth. So for example, we need phosphorus to grow fruits and vegetables. Phosphorus is one of those nutrients that we need to grow fruits and vegetables. And if we don't have enough phosphorus in our soil, then sometimes we need to extract phosphate from mountains and from rocks and minerals. So we dig these huge canyons into our mountains to get that phosphorus, just so we could put it back in the soil. So we're digging up, these huge mines, these canyons, um, when ultimately we could be getting that phosphorus from the food waste that we have. So some foods are high in phosphorus, and if we were to just compost those food scraps and those garden scraps and allow that to decompose into compost, like what I was just talking about, it's a more natural system of getting those nutrients that we need back into the soil, instead of digging them out of our mountains and creating caverns and big old mines just for these nutrients, for these elements that we need. So yeah, definitely fertilizer can be bad in that we are taking and not replenishing, the phosphorus or the phosphate that comes from the mountains. Whereas if we're growing things, we can put those back into the soil instead of taking from our natural resources. So I hope that answered your question.
Very good question, Nathan. Thank you for
Yeah,
asking that.
great question. And lastly, on this slide, I have some orange slices on here, and that's just to show that a lot of citrus, like lemon or lime or oranges, can be used to make cleaning products. So I have some homemade cleaning products that I make. I just add some orange peels with some vinegar. You let it sit for a few weeks, and then you can use that to wipe up your countertops and clean up around your house. And it smells kind of good. It smells a little citrusy, but it doesn't have all the hazardous chemicals of all those other cleaners that you buy at the store. And another last topic of waste we're going to cover today is plastic waste. It accounts for about almost 13% of the waste that we generate in total. And plastic is made from petroleum oil, and that's a non-renewable resource, right? So if we're extracting oil out of our earth, at some point we're going to run out. It doesn't just come back overnight. And making plastic actually uses a lot of water and energy and a lot of harmful chemicals that can potentially pollute our water and our air systems. And plastic can be recycled up to 6 times, usually between 4 and 6 times, but not all plastics can be recycled. So in general, hard plastics are recyclable. So things like, soda bottles or water bottles or food containers are usually recyclable, and soft plastics are usually not recyclable. So things like Ziploc bags or saran wrap, grocery bags, a lot of times they're not recyclable. So always look for that recycling symbol on any plastics you have to see if it is recyclable. And the problem with plastics is that they do not decompose. So like unlike organic material that decomposes into compost, plastic does not. It actually just breaks up or degrades into smaller and smaller pieces, which makes it harder to clean up, and it's easily mistakable as food for aquatic animals. So a lot of fish are eating these tiny plastic pellets thinking that it's food, but they're actually just eating plastic. Um, 69% of plastic bottles don't get recycled, and in the Los Angeles area alone, up to 20,000 pounds of plastic waste fragments like straws, bags, and soda bottles are carried into the Pacific Ocean every day. Um, We'd love to hear from you. What are some ways that you reduce plastic waste? Or if you have any questions about plastic waste, and for the sake of time, I think I'm just gonna jump right into the next slide right here, which is to show you how you can do these things to reduce plastic waste. You can use a metal straw. I was using one this morning for my smoothie. So instead of using a plastic straw, I've used that one over 100 times, I bet. or a metal water bottle is also great, not only for the ability to reuse it over and over again, but it also keeps your water really cold if you want it to be cold, or it keeps your coffee or your tea really hot if you want to keep liquids hot in there for a very long time. Again, using a reusable bag instead of using a plastic bag at the grocery store, and using reusable, forks and spoons, and also Tupperware to store your leftover food. Instead of using Ziploc bags, or instead of using plastic forks and spoons, which could all be very easy and convenient because you just get to throw it away. And hey, guess what? You don't have to do the dishes, but it's also very wasteful. So if we use these reusable containers, reusable utensils, then ultimately we will save on the amount of waste that we create. And for a quick second, I just want to focus on glass and metals, because these are two of the smallest, you know, topics of waste, types of waste that we create. But ultimately, that's a good thing, because these are the most recyclable materials. Both glass and metal can be recycled hundreds, thousands of times without losing their structure, without losing their integrity. Glass is made from sand, and that can be recycled. And aluminum and tin are the most common metals that are used and recycled. So you can make 20 recycled aluminum cans with the same amount of energy it takes to create one new aluminum can. So we can save 20 times more energy just by making recycled metals instead of making new metals. This is just to show you that you could take recycled glass, mix it with new sand and sodium carbonate and calcium carbonate, and you heat it up to very high temperatures, and then you could shape it into new glass. So all of this is just to show you that we can exist in a linear system where we are using things from the earth and just throwing them away, sending them to the landfill, where again, they're creating those greenhouse gases and we're not really getting another use out of them. Or we can try to keep things as circular as possible. How can we reuse things? How can we recycle things? How can we make sure that these resources that we've taken from the earth have another life, and that we're not just extracting everything to the point of depletion to where they're going to be gone someday? And the one last thing I would just want to hit on is just sake of convenience versus sustainability. So even with something like a mask, you can have a disposable mask, or you can have a reusable mask, and that reusable one is going to save you from a lot of wasted masks. And I'm starting to see masks pile up on my streets and on the sidewalks and down at the beach. So it's unfortunate, but if we can have a reusable one, we can save ourselves from having images like this, where a lot of masks are ending up in our environment. So if you have any questions or would like to reach out for any support for a campus project that you've got, feel free to reach out. Here's my email address, kderrig@treepeople.org. And once again, thank you for joining us this morning. I hope you learned at least one new thing today.
Kenny, we have one more question or idea, I guess, and you kind of talked about that. So this is Nathan from Southgate Middle.
Hey,
How
Nathan.
can community cleanups help reduce this?
Absolutely. Great question, Nathan. Yes, community cleanups certainly are a great thing. And especially, on the streets near the gutters, or near the Los Angeles River, where a lot of the waste ends up carrying these waste items out into the ocean, is a huge help. And, when we're able to gather in larger groups, once again, community cleanups are definitely something that we at Generation Earth and Tree People can help to facilitate with your school, with your community, your neighborhood. And yes, will ultimately save a lot of waste from ending up in our ocean, where we like to play instead of pick up trash. Great question.
Great question. One last question.
Sure.
What can we do to make sure that we all use recycled paper?
Good question. So, when you're shopping at Staples, you can buy notebooks that are made from recycled paper. But I even like to just kind of recycle paper at home using old paper that would otherwise just go to waste. So using the back of an envelope, as using that as scratch paper, or definitely trying to use the front and back of each side of paper. But yeah, when you're out shopping, if you're buying paper from the store, you can buy new paper, or you can buy recycled paper. And on the packaging, it should tell you, it might say post-consumer recycled paper, which means that it's been used and recycled and now it's being sold again. But so you can do it that way, or like I said, I like to kind of just pick up scrap paper, envelopes or note cards, or the back of, other notes that I've taken, and just try to maximize the amount of paper that I'm using before I even throw it away or recycle it.
Very good questions. Thank you so much.
Yes, great
I would
question.
like to thank our STEM partner, Mr. Kenny Derrick, for spending time with us today and teaching us about global warming, and most importantly, what can we do to help? Students, do not forget to log today's learning and observations in your journal. Your teacher is going to discuss that with you guys tomorrow. Once again, thank you, Mr. Kenny, for spending some time with us
Thank you.
today,
Yeah.
teaching us about how our trash contributes to global warming and what can we do to help. Thank you, everyone who participated and sent us amazing questions. Everyone have a great, great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day. Thank you, Mar.
Thank you.
Have a good one.